Have you ever sat with someone you love, laugh with them, make plans, maybe talk about the future, and just assume you'll see them again tomorrow? That was Brittany and Crystal. Two young women, both 24, in love, raising a child, figuring things out like the rest of us. They weren't rich. They weren't famous. They were just real. You could pass them at the store, sit next to them at a stoplight, never knowing what they were carrying. And maybe that's why this story hurts so much. Because this could have been anybody. A weekend trip. A break from the noise. Just the two of them, escaping for a bit. But what they didn't know was that one of them wouldn't come back alive. And neither of them would be seen alive again. On the morning of March 7, 2014, a man taking out the trash behind a corner store in Port Boulevard found their bodies, left side by side like garbage. One beaten, one shot, no note, no answers. And just like that, two lives were gone. This wasn't about money. This wasn't some random crime on the street. No, this came from someone close. Someone who should have protected them. Someone who should have been proud to know them. What happened to Brittany and Crystal isn't just a tragedy. It's a warning. Because sometimes the most dangerous place is home. If that sentence just made your stomach drop, if it made you think of someone in your life, don't brush it off. Like this video. Subscribe. Stay with us. Their story deserves to be heard. And what happened next? You won't believe how close it all really was. Brittany Cosby was the kind of person who didn't need a room full of noise to be heard. Quiet, thoughtful, but strong. She carried herself with calm confidence. She had this way of observing everything, taking it all in before speaking. People around her trusted that. Her smile was soft but honest. When she gave it, she meant it. She was close to her family, especially her grandmother, who helped raise her. She had her faith, and she had her independence. And even though life hadn't been perfect, she worked hard. She didn't ask for much, just peace and love, and for the people in her life to accept her as she was. Crystal Jackson was a little louder than Brittany, a little more outgoing, the kind of energy that made you laugh when you didn't feel like it. But she was grounded. She worked long hours and still made time for what mattered. Her daughter, Zania, was her world. At just 5 years old, that little girl looked up at Crystal like she hung the moon. Crystal never left her behind, not unless she had to. And when she did, it was always with someone she trusted, with the promise that mommy would be right back. She wasn't just a parent. She was protective, gentle, and present. The two met through mutual friends. Houston's community isn't the largest, but it's tight. It didn't take long for them to connect. Their love wasn't loud or flashy. They weren't chasing likes or attention. It was simple and real. They moved in together, built a routine. Some nights they'd stay up late just talking. Other times they'd visit family, help with errands, babysit, cook. They had a rhythm. They had plans. And even if the world didn't always approve, they kept showing up for each other. But it wasn't easy. Crystal's mother, a devout Jehovah's Witness, struggled with her daughter's identity. Brittany's father, James Cosby, also had his opinions. And some of those opinions weren't just hard to hear. They were dangerous. He lived with them, under the same roof. And while he claimed he was trying to accept things, some things he said left the women uneasy, especially Brittany. Sometimes she'd vent to friends, saying she didn't feel fully safe. But she brushed it off. It was her dad, after all. What could really happen? Crystal wanted to move out eventually, get their own place, start fresh with her daughter. But like a lot of young couples, money was tight. So they stayed, and they tried to make it work. For the most part, they did. Until they didn't. That's the thing about love. It doesn't protect you from everything. You can care with your whole heart. You can show up, do the right thing, make sacrifices. But love can't change a heart that's already made up its mind. Brittany and Crystal weren't perfect, but they were good. They were working. They were trying. And they didn't deserve what happened to them. They didn't deserve to be taken away. Not like that. Not from this world. Not from the people who depended on them. If their story hits you, even just a little, don't just sit with that feeling. Click the like button. Subscribe. And if you're watching and still holding back, still thinking, maybe I'll subscribe later, don't. That kind of silence is how these stories keep getting repeated. Speak their names. Brittany Cosby, Crystal Jackson. Because they matter. They mattered then. They still do. March 5th, 2014. A Wednesday. The weather in Houston was warming up, mid-70s, just enough sunshine to make you want to leave the house. Brittany and Crystal had talked about getting away for a while. Nothing major, just a couple days near the water. They chose Port Boulevard. It was quiet, peaceful, and they'd been there before. Familiar, but far enough. They didn't pack heavy. Just a few outfits, toiletries, some snacks. Crystal made sure her daughter was set up with her parents for the weekend. Brittany, meanwhile, said goodbye to her grandmother, gave her a kiss on the cheek, and told her they'd be back by Sunday. They left that night in Crystal's car, a silver Kia. No arguments, no drama, just a getaway for two people trying to reset. But inside the home they were leaving behind, something was off, something that had been growing for months. James Cosby, Brittany's father, lived with them. It wasn't ideal, but like a lot of families, they made it work because they had to. Rent wasn't cheap. Brittany's job at the bar helped, but it didn't stretch far. And Crystal, working on and off, was trying to juggle everything. Motherhood, bills, staying afloat. Having her partner's dad in the mix wasn't part of the dream, but it helped them stay above water. Or so they thought. James had his own past. People in the neighborhood knew it. His criminal record stretched back years, assault, sexual offenses, jail time. He wasn't exactly known for patience. And when it came to Brittany and Crystal's relationship, his feelings weren't quiet. He told Brittany he didn't approve, said things that cut deep, words no father should ever throw at his daughter. She would talk about it sometimes, say he gave her a weird look, say he moved things around the house just to mess with them, say he muttered under his breath when he thought no one was listening. But every time she brought it up, she'd end with something like, he's just old school. He'll come around. That was the hope. What they didn't know was that James had found something that pushed him over the edge. Weeks before their trip, he came across a picture of Brittany and Crystal together. A photo he later said made him feel disrespected. That photo stayed on his mind. He didn't talk about it much, but the people close to him said he seemed different after that. The days before the trip, he was quieter, more alert, watching. He didn't wish them well when they said they were going. He didn't even say goodbye. He just sat in his chair in the living room and stayed there. Blank. Cold. What no one could see in that moment was that this wasn't just tension anymore. It was something else. Something pointed. Something ready. The night they left, Brittany locked the front door behind her. She looked over her shoulder one last time, then got into the car. That was the last time anyone saw them alive. And the next time James Cosby would speak of his daughter, it would be to explain why her blood was on the walls. It was just after 7:30 a.m. on Friday, March 7th, 2014. In Port Boulevard, a small coastal town southeast of Houston, the morning was still quiet. A store clerk at the Fisherman's Cove convenience store went out back to take out the trash. The dumpster sat behind the building, tucked near the loading area. What he saw next would stay with him forever. Two bodies, slumped against the base of the blue dumpster. Lifeless. One leaned sideways. The other laid closer to the edge of the pavement. It was clear they hadn't been sleeping. There was blood, bruising, Stillness. He backed away. His voice was shaking when he made the 911 call. When deputies arrived, they found the bodies of Brittany Cosby and Crystal Jackson. The sun was barely up, but there was no mistaking what had happened. Both women were dead, but the way they'd been killed told investigators this wasn't an accident, and it definitely wasn't random. Crystal had been shot. Once. A clean bullet wound to the head. Brittany's death was different. Blunt force trauma. Her skull had been fractured. Multiple blows. Up close. Rage-filled. Personal. There were no stolen purses. No scattered belongings. No empty wallets. It wasn't a robbery. Their car was gone. But the way they'd been left, positioned like trash behind a store, that said more than a missing vehicle ever could. It said someone wanted them erased. Quietly, cruelly, and without dignity. The medical examiner confirmed the worst. Brittany's injuries showed signs of being attacked in a familiar environment, possibly somewhere she felt safe. Investigators took a closer look at the blood on her clothing. It wasn't just external. It had soaked through. That much force meant something. Whoever did this wasn't guessing. They knew her. Crystal's gunshot wound was so specific, it looked almost like an execution. But why would someone kill two women like this in two different ways and then dump their bodies in the same spot? The answer was both complicated and simple. Someone wanted control. Over both of them. Over how their story ended. Police found drag marks leading from a vehicle to the dumpster. Whoever moved them did it fast. Sloppy, but not rushed enough to panic. That car, Crystal's silver Kia, was nowhere to be found. Witnesses hadn't seen it drive off, but there were no surveillance cameras in the back alley to catch who left them there. Just shadows and silence. The corner store opened at 8 a.m. that day. If the worker had waited even 30 more minutes to take out the trash, the bodies might have been discovered by a customer, maybe even a child. And the longer they sat there, the colder the trail would have gone. Deputies wrapped the scene in tape. By noon, the Boulevard Peninsula was crawling with news vans, deputies, and reporters trying to piece together who these two women were and why they were left in such a cruel way. But the answer wasn't on that pavement. The truth was waiting hundreds of miles away, in a home that still smelled like bleach. We tell these stories because someone has to. If it's not you, then who? Turn on the notification bell so you don't stay ignorant to the horrors happening around us. And if you're still refusing to subscribe, go ahead, drop a comment and tell us why. Let's see how that logic holds up. The phone rang just before 10 a.m. It was Crystal's mother who got the call. The woman on the other end said she was with the sheriff's office in Galveston County. She asked her to sit down. What followed didn't feel real. Two women found behind a store. One of them Crystal. No, it couldn't be. That wasn't possible. Crystal had just texted the night before. She said she'd be back on Sunday. Her daughter was still waiting. But the officer wasn't guessing. He was certain. Crystal Jackson was gone. And Brittany Cosby was with her. At Brittany's grandmother's house, the moment was just as heavy. A knock on the door. Two officers standing outside with tight expressions. No smiles. No hope in their voices. When they asked to come inside, her grandmother already knew. Her body slumped. She asked one question, "Are you sure?" They nodded. That was it. The room fell into a silence so deep, even the walls felt it. Within hours, family members were huddled in living rooms, churches, and kitchens, holding one another up, crying, praying, asking questions that had no answers. But one face was missing from all of it. James Cosby. At first, police hadn't named any suspects. They were still trying to figure out how Brittany and Crystal ended up over an hour away from home, dumped behind a store. The car was still missing. There were no clear eyewitnesses. But when they made contact with James Cosby to notify him, things didn't sit right. He didn't ask the kind of questions you expect from a father. He didn't ask if they had the right person. He didn't cry. What he did say and how quickly he said it started a chain of doubt. Officers paid a visit to the home Brittany and Crystal had been living in, the same house James Cosby stayed in. It was just a routine welfare check, or so they thought. But the moment they stepped inside, that changed. They noticed the smell first. Something sharp. Bleach. The living room had been cleaned, but too well. The floor looked freshly scrubbed. Furniture was out of place. And then they noticed it. A smear of what looked like dried blood on the doorframe. It hadn't been wiped properly. Forensics arrived with luminol. What lit up in the entryway and living room confirmed what many feared. Someone had been attacked inside that house. A significant amount of blood. More than what a person could survive. It was Brittany's. The story James Cosby gave was full of holes. He claimed he hadn't seen them since the day before they left. He said they must have gone straight to Port Boulevard. He had no idea what happened. But when detectives asked about the blood in the house, he froze. He said maybe Brittany got a nosebleed. Then he said she might have cut herself. Then he stopped talking. Meanwhile, Crystal's daughter, just 5 years old, was told that her mother wouldn't be coming home. At that age, death isn't a concept you understand. It's just absence, emptiness, a missing face in the morning, a missing voice at bedtime. One day, her mom was packing a bag and saying goodbye. The next, her photo was on the evening news. As officers gathered more evidence, a picture was forming. The girls never made it to the coast. They were attacked before they ever left Houston. The car was used to move the bodies, and then it vanished. But investigators weren't just guessing. They had a hunch that someone close knew exactly where it went. And the person they suspected was already watching them watch him. If you care about justice, not just for these women, but for the next victims, then this channel is where that starts. Don't be the passive viewer who does nothing. When the results from the luminol testing came back, the truth was no longer buried. The blood found on the floor inside the home wasn't just anyone's. It was Brittany Cosby's. Not trace amounts. Not accidental. The volume told a different story. This wasn't a cut. It wasn't an injury someone could walk away from. Brittany had died right there in the house. And someone tried to clean it up. But they missed spots. Under the table. In the hallway. On the doorframe. They scrubbed hard, but they didn't scrub smart. Detectives returned with a warrant. They searched the home room by room. In the bathroom, they found blood-stained towels shoved behind the toilet tank. In the trash outside, a pair of gloves. Inside the gloves, DNA. James Cosby's. The same man who said he had nothing to do with any of it. But evidence doesn't lie. And neither do fingerprints. Back in Port Boulevard, investigators searched the dumpster area one more time. This time they checked the wooden fence, just feet away. There, wedged between a pallet and a broken crate, was a cardboard box. Tucked inside it, Brittany's driver's license. Wrapped in a receipt. That receipt had a fingerprint. It matched James Cosby. Meanwhile, surveillance footage from a nearby building came through. Grainy but clear enough. The timestamp read 3:52 a.m. A silver car pulling up behind the store. One man gets out. He opens the back. He drags something, then disappears from frame. Minutes later, he's back. He's sweating. He drives off alone. They ran the license plate. It was Crystal's Kia, the one that had vanished. The same car that James Cosby had been seen driving 2 days before the discovery of the bodies. When they pulled phone records, it got worse. His location data placed him at Port Boulevard that same night. He had tried to erase the trail, but tech had done what bleach couldn't. He was brought in again. This time he was calm. Too calm. He didn't deny being in the car. He didn't deny knowing the women were dead. But he refused to explain how his prints ended up on a box less than a foot from his daughter's body. The arrest was made quietly. No dramatic chase. No shouting. Just a father in handcuffs being walked out of a house that still had photos of Brittany on the wall. He didn't say her name. Not once. For the detectives on the case, this wasn't just solving a murder. This was something heavier. A man who was supposed to protect his daughter and instead beat her to death, then executed her partner and dumped them both like they didn't matter. The brutality of it wasn't just in what he did. It was in how little he seemed to care afterward. You've stayed through the evidence, through the heartbreak. So here's a real question. What do you think drives someone to hurt the people they're supposed to protect? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The question that lingered in every room, courtroom, and church hall after the arrest was, why? What pushes a man to murder his own daughter and her partner, then leave them in a back alley like they were nothing? What happened inside James Cosby that made this feel like a choice he could live with? One word came up again and again: control. Friends of Brittany said she had been pulling away from him, gaining her voice, speaking up more. She was in love, building a life with someone he didn't approve of. That challenged everything he thought a daughter should be. She wasn't asking him for permission anymore. She wasn't shrinking herself to make him comfortable. And for a man like James Cosby, that kind of independence felt like rejection. But control wasn't the only factor. This was also about hate. Quiet, ugly, old school hate that hides behind religion and respectability. He claimed to believe in the Bible, but what he practiced was cruelty. Brittany's family said he used scripture as a weapon. He said their relationship was unnatural. That Crystal had turned Brittany against God. He didn't hide it. He didn't soften his words. And the people around him, neighbors, old friends, even family, had seen it. Some said they just didn't think he'd take it this far. Others admitted they always knew something was off about him. And then came the records. James Cosby wasn't a stranger to violence. His criminal history wasn't light. Years before, he served time for sexual assault. He'd been listed as a registered offender. He wasn't supposed to be living near certain people. He wasn't even supposed to be around his daughter without restrictions. But somehow the rules got bent. Or maybe no one was paying close enough attention. Either way, Brittany was living under the same roof as a man with a violent past, a man who never should have had that kind of access to her life again. So was this just about her relationship? Or was this about something deeper, resentment, shame, the kind that builds up over years? Some believe James saw Brittany's love for Crystal as a final act of defiance. She was no longer his to mold, no longer bending to his judgment. She loved Crystal openly, without apology. And to a man like James Cosby, that wasn't just uncomfortable, it was unforgivable. Crystal wasn't just collateral damage. She was a target. She represented everything he couldn't control in Brittany. She was the partner, the supporter, the one who lifted her up. That made her dangerous to him. And he chose to silence her permanently. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment act. This was calculated. The different methods used to kill each woman, one bludgeoned, one shot, speak volumes. Brittany's death was messy, personal. It happened up close. Crystal's was fast. A bullet to the head. Executed. Clean. As if he'd planned exactly who would get what. The theories don't ease the pain. They don't undo the silence left behind. But they show us something important. This wasn't just about hate. It was about power. And when someone feels their power slipping, they sometimes reach for destruction to feel like they've taken it back. And the saddest part? There were warning signs. Brittany had confided in friends. Crystal had shared her concerns. But in the end, no one could have imagined it would go this far. And now a daughter is gone. A mother is gone. A child is left without answers. And a father, who should have been her protector, is now her killer. On July 6, 2016, inside a Texas courtroom, James Larry Cosby stood before a judge and jury. He wore a plain shirt, no tie, no visible emotion. The trial had gone on for weeks. Witnesses spoke. Experts testified. The jury heard about the blood in the home, the fingerprint on the box, the surveillance footage, and the history that made everything feel heavier. In the end, there was no reasonable doubt left to stand on. The verdict was clear. Guilty. The sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole. He will die behind bars. The courtroom was quiet as the decision was read. No celebration. No cheers. Just silence. A heavy silence that only comes when justice and grief sit in the same room. Brittany's family wept quietly. Crystal's family held each other. No words could bring back what was lost. But at least now, they knew he couldn't hurt anyone else. Crystal's daughter is now being raised by her grandparents. She's in school. She's learning to write her name, tie her shoes, tell the time. She asks about her mother. Sometimes she dreams of her. Other times she holds photos and asks questions no child should ever have to ask. Her life moved forward, but it moved forward with a gap. A missing piece that will never be filled. She'll grow up knowing what happened, knowing that her mother was taken in a way that no one deserves. Brittany and Crystal's names are still spoken. In churches, in living rooms, on street corners. Their families continue to honor them not as victims, but as women who loved deeply, lived freely, and were taken unjustly. The justice system did its part, but justice, no matter how firm, cannot unright loss. It cannot reverse absence. It cannot raise children or mend broken hearts. Still, what remains is truth, and truth matters. Truth lets families sleep. Truth brings peace to the names that headlines forgot too quickly. And in the case of Brittany Cosby and Crystal Jackson, the truth was loud, painful, and necessary. And now it's preserved, not just in case files, but in memory, in voices, in stories like this one. This wasn't just a crime story. This was a mirror, and the reflection it shows is hard to look at. Because what happened to Brittany and Crystal didn't begin behind a dumpster. It started in a home, in quiet disapproval, in offhand comments, in rules wrapped in religion. It started in the spaces where love was supposed to be safe and instead became dangerous. And someone watching this right now, you know exactly what that looks like. Maybe it's your niece who just came out, your cousin with the bruises that don't match the story, your friend who's constantly fine but never really is. This is where silence becomes a weapon. This is where pretending not to see becomes the same thing as helping it happen. And this is where that ends. If there's tension at your dinner table, don't let it grow into tragedy. If you feel something in your gut, don't wait until it becomes regret. Speak up. Ask questions. Check in on the people who've started pulling away. Show up before it's too late. If you're a parent, your child's safety includes their identity. If you're a friend, being an ally doesn't mean waiting until the funeral. And if you're in a position to help, help now. Because the next Brittany and Crystal are out there. And they don't need sympathy after the fact. They need protection now. This isn't just another crime story. It's a warning. Someone watching this right now knows someone in danger, and staying quiet is how stories like Brittany and Crystal's keep repeating. If this made you feel something, don't just sit with it. Share this video with someone you care about. It could be the conversation that saves a life.